your hard work determines how successful you will be in life and like where your career path takes you. You know, you have to really focus on what you want to do and not how people perceive you, but like how you perceive yourself and how you can make all these different changes in your life.
You are now tuning in to the Roughnecks Podcast with your host, Cole Nixon. Much love.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. We are on to episode 57, I believe. I can't even keep track anymore. It just keeps climbing. I still can't believe that we've made it this far. Like I said back a few episodes ago, I didn't even think we'd make it to episode 10, but we're on to 50-something, 57, I believe. But today we're going to continue with this topic of hard work, and I have someone joining me today who truly exemplifies what hard work can do for you and where it can lead you. Ohio State Buckeye and Olympian, Adelaide Aquilla, welcome to the Roughnecks Podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I hope I did pronounce your name right. I meant to ask you beforehand, but is that something that you kind of run into every once in a while, I'm assuming?
Oh my gosh, all the time. The other weekend, we had like our student athlete game for Ohio State, and the announcers got it wrong. And immediately I was like texting all these people. I was like, it's pronounced this way. Can we like please get that right for next game? Like, oh.
Yeah, I that's something with names. It happens all the time. I just wanted to make sure I pronounced it correctly. But I start all my episodes by allowing the guests to tell the Roughnecks listeners who they are. So tell us a little bit about who you are.
So I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I started doing track in elementary school. It was kind of funny. We had this thing at my school where if you did every event on the track in a year, you would get a sweatshirt. And so it was my weekend to do shot put. And I guess I was good at it. I don't know. So they made me stick with it. I didn't get the sweatshirt, but I guess from becoming an Olympian is pretty much better than that. And then once I got to high school, I really stuck with track and just kept like improving it and slowly starting to like it more and more. You know, when you're a little kid, like you don't really love something. At least that's not how I was. I was just kind of all over the place doing anything that I wanted to. And then once I got to high school, I started really like honing in on what I wanted to do and like continue throwing shot put in college. And so around my junior year, early senior year, I think I started getting a couple of recruiting offers. And so I was between Miami of Ohio and Ohio State. And I talked it over with my parents, just like kind of seeing their opinion. Obviously I was still going to make the choice on my own, but just like wanted to see where their head was at, what they thought was best for me. And then I ultimately chose Ohio State just for the progression of my track and field career. You know, I could see myself competing against these Big Ten athletes or like national champions at the time, like all these really high caliber athletes all the time, versus if I would have went to Miami, I would have had one or two meets with them a year versus like seeing Big Ten athletes every weekend. So came to Ohio State. My freshman and sophomore year wasn't really focused on track, was just kind of like taking in all of college.
Everybody has that. I remember my freshman year of college, and I went to a small D3 school, but you still almost, because I remember watching my GPA go and going, oh crap, this is not normal. Yeah. You get that wake up call freshman year though.
Mine came my sophomore year. I took chemistry and calc at the same time.
Well, that's where you messed up.
Yes. That's where I messed up. And that was like, all right, like you have to focus, like you're getting all out of hand. So after that, my coach called me and she said, like, I think you can be really good. I need you to dedicate the time to the sport. Give it your all in weights, give it your all in training, and just like do all the extra stuff and you can be really good. And that's kind of when I had my turnaround, like not only academically, but also like athletically. I was like, all right, I could definitely see myself doing this post collegiate and then really like focusing on it. So I finished out that year. I stayed down here, which was the first time I had ever done. I stayed down here for the summer. trained all summer, just like lifting weights and everything. And then I came into my junior year and I was having a really good fall training. So normally in the fall, we'll do like general prep. Like we'll basically do like circuit training, body weight stuff, just to like make sure we're not just strong, we're actually athletes too. And so I was having a really good fall. We were seeing really good numbers in my shot put distances. And then indoor seasons comes, I'm doing really well. We get to nationals and it gets canceled the day before we're supposed to throw. They sent out the message a day before we were supposed to throw. And I was like heartbroken. I was like, I remember Stanford or Harvard or somebody wasn't allowed to go to the meet. And I was like, I wish I was in their position. Like I would have been saved all of this anticipation and like happiness of actually being here versus like getting it shut down. And then I went home, stayed with my family for COVID, trained by myself. My dad like welded me a squat rack. So it had like the 2 little squat bars and then for the bench. And I came back last year and had a had a pretty good year. 1 indoor Big Tens, 1 outdoor Big Tens, 1 indoor nationals, 1 outdoor nationals, and then went to the Olympics. So
yeah, that's what I was going to start this episode. Once you got done with this, I wanted to go through your list of accomplishments from Ohio State and just through your career, which is a lengthy list. And it's kind of crazy to look at. Like you went from a walk-on to scholarship at Ohio State. You were 2021 Female Athlete of the Year for Ohio State, 2-time NCAA champ, 3-time Big Ten champ, set the school record for indoor and outdoor shot put records, Big Ten Athlete of the Championships for both indoor and outdoor, Field Athlete of the Year honors for both indoor and outdoor. And then 15 days after winning your outdoor title is when you became the U.S. Olympian, plus 3-time first team All-American. And you even threw out a first pitch for the Cleveland Indians. We'll throw that in there because that's pretty awesome, because not many people honestly get to do that.
That was pretty cool.
Your list, and like that just goes to show that it's not just talent that gets you there, it's the hard work. Because you just talked about you had that little slump, and it happens, I feel like, to every athlete, especially because I went through it in my college career. I played college football, but on a smaller scale. But it's still like you go through that little slump, and sometimes all it takes is that one person being like, listen, like you can be good, you just got to do this, and that little extra push to get to where you need to be.
We always talk about how when you're trying to achieve greatness, the success path is never like straight linear. You're always going to have little ups and downs. So to go through those and like have those people with you during those downs is really like what makes the difference in like you continuing to do your sport or you continuing to do like whatever your career path is, like that type of thing. And then having them there to constantly not like reassure you, but like almost like say like you got it, like you've already achieved like this much. Like that's one of the big things I struggle with is since I was a walk-on, like you kind of touched upon, I always had that walk-on mentality. So I'm always thinking like, oh, I'm not as good as her because I'm a walk-on. Like I'm never going to get out of that phase where I don't think of myself as a walk-on. Like even though I made it to the Olympics, like I'm still going to think of myself like as a walk-on. And it's so weird because in practice, I've seen myself throw so far, like to win like any meet basically. And it's just like weird that that sticks with you no matter what.
I was going to ask, because you kind of touched on it, if being a walk-on did discourage you a little bit, because I've talked to a lot of people. I've had CJ Saunders, who played at Ohio State for the football team, on this podcast, and he was a walk-on. And we talked about kind of how it can be discouraging because you get that mentality of, oh, I'm not as good as them. But what was your thought process? Like, where did you like get that gear to keep grinding and keep going after it?
So this past indoor season, I started off with a really disappointing mark. Like in practice, I'd been throwing 2 meters further than that. So basically like 6 feet. And I started off with like something terrible. I think it was like 16 meters. So like, I actually don't know the feet conversion. I would say like 54 feet. Probably.
I'm not
like
good with the whole math conversion thing either, so it's fine.
So I threw like 54 feet and then I freaked myself out in my head. I was like, what are you like? I basically convinced myself that that was what I meant to throw. Even though every day in practice, I would see myself throwing like 18 meters, and it would be consistent. It wouldn't be like one throw. It'd be consistently hitting that. And so eventually my coach and I, it got to the point where I was like super frustrated at practice. I started crying. I'm a very emotional person. Like I kind of like get attached to something, and I'm very competitive. So if something's not going my way, it's automatically, I'm just going to start crying. So I was having a really bad practice, and we were just like sitting there, and I just like left practice. That was the only time I've ever left practice. I probably will never do it again. But I left practice, and she called me after, and we had this like 2-hour conversation. She was like, I don't know why you're doubting yourself. Like, you're better than this. Like, you've thrown this far. Like, I see it every day in practice. Like, you're literally out. Like I just said, you're convincing yourself you're not good. And so we talked about it for like 2 hours. And then the next meet I came out, did a little better, like slowly growing my confidence back. And then finally by Big Tens, I had thrown like 1772 to win or something, like not great, but still like good. And then indoor nationals came, and I was like, all right, like if I foul out, but like I want to give it my all. Like I didn't expect myself to be here, especially when I started off the season so poorly. So
yeah, like, and you talked earlier, like you're gonna have your ups and downs, and that's in any part of life. That's the thing. I have a lot of athletes on this podcast. Being a former athlete, I connect to athletes a lot better. But when you look at athletics, it teaches you a lot about life as well, because you're gonna have those ups and downs in life, but you just can't give up. And that's something that you exemplify is, you're gonna have those, and you need those mentors in your life, because they come, you can't push them away. Sometimes we tend to, I did, and like it happens, but because I remember like my siblings were one of them that I'd always push away. And then like come later in life, I'm like, man, they were just trying to help me. But it's one of those things that you're going to have those ups and downs in life, and that's okay. Just know once you go down, you have to go down to go back up. So once you go, just because you're going down doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Just know you got to, and it's on you too, to climb yourself back up. And that goes along with the slogan of this podcast, which is grab the bull by the horns. And it's the whole thing of the bull is life, and we're the bull rider, and it's going to knock us down, and that it's going to happen. But look at every bull rider that you've ever seen. They get back up and they go ride a bull again. You got to get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life, because no one else is going to do it for you. You might get some encouragement, some push, but you're the only person who can truly do that.
Yeah. I think that's kind of Ryan Day, Ohio State Athletics just posted something about Ryan Day and his struggle with mental health. And I think this like kind of translates into that like very like well. Like he talked about how he had never spoken about how his father had committed suicide when he was at a young age. And then he finally started like telling people, and he really just felt like a sense of control in his life. And he was able to grow his relationship with his family, his wife, his kids, like all these, like his athletes too, he was able to like just grow so much exponentially more on like once he really like accepted that he was at bottom, like he needed to go up and like tell people about like what had happened in his past.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too. Like you have to talk about things sometimes. I know you might not want to talk about things right away when things happen, but at the end of the day, because I can't think of a time where when I finally talked about something, whether it be a breakup, a bad day, whatever it is, when I talked about it, all of a sudden I was like, man, I just feel better. Like you feel a lot better. And that is one of the things that always help too with athletics is you get that stress reliever, whether it be going to the gym or going to practice, whatever it is, you get that stress reliever, get some energy out. But at the end of the day, you have to talk about things as well. Mental health is a big thing nowadays, and it's becoming more recognized. And I'm glad it is, because especially being a student athlete, you know what it's like, those long days, like you have practice, you have this, you have that, and then you got to fit in your schoolwork too, because that is ultimately what they tell you is the most important thing. But it's a hard thing to manage all that. And that is one thing that you learn in college real quick, being a student athlete, is how to time manage. What was that like as a freshman, coming in? What did you struggle with the time management side of things?
Yes. My freshman and sophomore year, I was terrible at time management. Like I think I would spend like 3 hours total on homework, and I would be enrolled in like 15 to 18 credit hours. So like a lot of time spent on, or not a lot of time spent on a lot of credit hours.
Yeah.
And after I had my ass kicked in chem and calc, I was like, all right, like you need to turn stuff around. And so then I started like planning out, like I'm kind of a meticulous, like detailed person. So I like plan out like, all right, I have class this time. I have to do this then. Like I will write out my schedule for the day, like every single day. So that's one of the big things that like helped me turn all of it around. And,
I can attest to that because when I originally came in, I was like, I don't need a planner. Like
Mhm.
I never used one in high school or anything. But when I started, like, my GPA went down the drain for a second. When I started using one, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I need to be doing something. Like I know what I have to do. And you space out that time for certain things. And there might
Mhm.
be nights where you don't get to go hang out with friends or go to the bar, play video games, whatever the hell it is. But it's a sacrifice you have to make because it's a sacrifice that'll benefit you later in life.
Right. Yeah. That was definitely one of the hardest things my sophomore year to like come to terms with. Like I was expecting there to be a perfect balance between like athletics, school, and having a social life. And I just had to like come to the realization that athletics and school are probably going to take up a lot more time than your social life. You'll
Mhm.
have like your few like nights with friends and everything, like you can talk to them, go to dinner with them, but you're never going to be like a normal person. You're not
Yeah.
going to have time. So that was what I kind of came to terms with my sophomore year, like figuring it all out.
One of the questions that I asked CJ Saunders that I wanted to ask you, both of you being walk-ons, and it relates very well. What advice would you give to someone who might be becoming a walk-on athlete at any whatever level it is? What advice would you give them?
So this might make not a lot of sense, but it might make a lot of sense. Don't try and aim for the person who's right in front of you. Try to aim to beat the person who's supposedly like the best person in the room. You want to try to compete with them at everything. When I was a freshman here, or when I was a sophomore, my goal was to throw the same distance as Sade, who was the national champion in weight indoor. My goal was to throw the same distance as her, lift the same amount as her, and just like constantly be competing with her. So I'm right under that level. So you're constantly pushing her and she's constantly pushing you. So you're constantly building that level until one person either goes all the way up or the other person passes them. So I just would say like aim for the best person in the room and don't like take your target off of them. And then once you become the best person, like you figure out what somebody in the professional world does. So like you'll figure out like what a professional shot putter throws or lifts or all of these distances, and you'll aim for those goals. Like you want to have all these different level goals for different things that you want to do. If you want to start in football, you have to adapt everything that a starter does. If you want to go to Big Ten championships and play there, like you have to adapt everything that you do, that those people do there. So it's just constantly like making these goals for yourself, achieving them, and then saying, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next?
100%, I agree, because it's almost the whole saying of iron sharpens iron. Because if you look at, that you want to like the workout thing. I remember my freshman year, you're a little scared to go list with some of these senior starters. I mean, I get it. It's a little, you don't know them. You're a freshman. Do they even want to lift with you? Whatever. But I remember being a senior and I'd start to bring them with me because that's what a senior did with me.
Yes.
He was like, hey, come lift with me. And, because all of a sudden you're like, you don't think you're not going to back down when someone's like, they bench 225 or whatever. And they're like, all right, your turn. You're like, I'm not going to tell you to take the weight off. Like, I'm just going to do it. And all of a sudden you become stronger. You push yourself a lot more when you work out with people or just surround yourself with people that are better than you essentially. And that's the whole thing of like, I don't remember the whole exact saying, but like, if you hang out with 5 bums, you're going to be the 6th one. If you hang out with 5 successful people, you're going to be the 6th one. You surround yourself with who you want to be.
Right. And that's also like one of the other things, like you touched upon the seniors pushing the freshmen. My thing is like, I want to be comfortable enough with everybody in the weight room that if you see me doing some like bullshit weight, or if I see you doing some bullshit weight, it's like immediately that person's getting called out. Like you're not about to come into the weight room. That's our mandatory practice right now, because we're only in 8 hours. That's our mandatory stuff, and just dilly-dally through it, like only give half effort. That's not going to happen. Like, this is how you get better. I've proved it. So many former athletes have proved it. Like, you have to see the pattern and adapt to the pattern, like you said, and keep growing with like everybody else.
Yes, 100%. So when did you actually get put on scholarship?
So I don't know if I'm allowed to say like what numbers I got exactly.
No, I just meant like when, like what year were you when you finally got, when they were like.
So I'm a 5th year right now. I got put on scholarship. It wasn't a lot. My junior year. So 3 years ago, or 2.5.
Yeah.
But 2 years ago, I got put on a little bit. And then after COVID season, I got put on a little bit more. And then finally this year was the first year I was on a full.
What was that feeling like when they were like, hey, we're putting you on some, even a little bit of scholarship?
I was overjoyed. I was, because like, well, when I was being recruited, they were like, all right, once you score a point at Big Tens, you can get put on scholarship. So I scored a point my indoor season. I was like, yes, like scholarship, here we go. And then coach called me and she was telling me about it, and I was super happy. I was like, yay, my first goal is like done. I scored.
Mm-hmm.
I made it to nationals that year. I didn't do well, and I got put on a little bit of scholarship. I was like, all right, perfect. Like 3 off the checklist. Now we have to create a new one.
100%. The other thing is, when you went to the Big Ten championship and won your first Big Ten championship, what was that like? And how much hard work did that take to get to that point?
That is, that so that was my favorite Big Ten championship, but I don't like my favorite like win. But the last one, it was cool too, because I beat the record. So for Big Ten's outdoor, so I'm like trying to figure out which one I like more. But that meet was almost very bad because I was warming up very well. Like I was doing well. I was throwing distances that would get me into finals. So I was like, all right, perfect. Get into the ring for my first 3 throws. Like, I swear that whole year I'd been throwing like 56 feet, 50 feet, 49, 38, like bad. I somehow barely made it into finals. I think I was the last person to make it in. I think I made it in by like 4 centimeters or something. So it was very, very close. And I remember my coach came over to me and she was like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, we're supposed to win this meet. If you don't win this meet, we don't win Big Tens. And I don't remember anything after that. Like, that's so bad. I just like blacked out. I was like
you just got in that zone. You were ready to go.
You're not going to be the girl who lets down the team. Like, everybody's come together. Oh, it was so bad. I was talking so much shit to myself, but ultimately, like, I threw a good throw. And then I just remember, like, I immediately, when it left my hand, I was like, oh, that was a good throw. And I saw it land near the line that was like 18 meters. I was like, let's go. I walk out of the ring. I'm like screaming my ass off, and it like ended up winning, and it was amazing.
So what are your actual workouts like? How often do you work out currently?
So it depends on the time of year. In the fall, so right now we're in the preseason training, so we only have 8 hours of actual like practice times allowed per week. So we'll do 2 hours. Sorry, I thought I just heard somebody come in here. We'll do hours of lifting for 4 days a week. Normally it doesn't take 2 hours. It's normally like an hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes, but we'll talk for like 15 minutes before or after, just like to debrief or like recap what's going to happen. And then right now, those lifts are kind of like I touched upon earlier, a lot of circuit training. We're starting to slowly get into our high volume, like hypertrophy phase. But right now it's a lot of like circuits, body weight stuff, just kind of cardio, because we don't once we get into our actual training, we don't do a lot of cardio just because we're so specifically focused on strength. And then in like a week from now, we're going to go into 3 times a week of just straight lifting. And it's probably going to be like, we'll do an Olympic lift, a bench, and then we'll do a squat. And then we'll have like 5 or 6 auxiliaries at the end. And we'll do that, probably a circuit one of the days, and another like clean bench squat type of workout another day. And then once we're in season, we lift 2 times a week, sometimes 3, it depends on how many meets we have, but we'll do a speed lift just to make sure we're firing the right muscles, and then like one big lift where you're kind of destroying your body.
Where is your favorite place that you've ever had a meet? Other than the home meets, because you can't call that. I'm talking about your away meets. Where's your favorite place that you've had?
I really like throwing at the Armory. It's in New York. It's really cool. I like going to New York, so I think that's why I like that meet so much. But it's lofted track, so like that meet, not lofted, but like the corners are banked, so they're going up. Normally track's flat, the corners are like that, so you get more turn, and it's easier to like transition into the straightaway. And then the throws area is right in the corner, and there's like a stadium almost around the throws area. So you see all these people like right above you while you're throwing, and there's like a cage there. It's super cool. And it's very like close, so you feel like everybody else's emotions when you're throwing. So like if somebody's having a bad meet, you'll know, and then like either get excited from it or like take that energy with you, you know?
Yeah. Another question that I was actually told to ask from somebody who I knew from high school, and they ran track, and I asked them a couple questions. I ran track way back in middle school, but they told me to ask, are you an indoor or outdoor person? Which do you prefer and why?
So this is a hard question. I like indoor because the temperature is regulated all the time. Because, okay, so this is like what an indoor track looks like. Like you'll have the track right there, and then this is our throws area. And then we'll have like 2 rings over there. So like the temperature is always regulated, and you'll be able to like know what you're walking into. But normally we don't travel a lot of places because the weather is normally like too bad for flights or something like that. So we'll just stay local. But I like outdoor because we get to travel places. Like I was in Oregon for 21 days. That was pretty cool. I went to Florida 3 times this year. Like just all of these cool places we get to travel to. So it's pretty equal for me. I don't really have a favorite. I do like outdoor shot put rings better than indoor because indoors on wood, outdoors on cement.
Okay. That makes sense. Another one is, do you have any pre-meet routines? Everybody has almost their superstitions in a way. Do you have anything, if it's the day before, anything that you do every single meet?
Yes. So I was looking through my wallet the other day, and I like pulled out 4 receipts. My go-to pre-meet meal, which I've had this for like 5 or 6 meets. So basically all of outdoor season besides Tokyo, they didn't have it there. I have steak, some sort of potato, a salad, and then some sort of vegetable. And I pulled out of my wallet like 3 receipts from Outback Steakhouse. And I was like, what are all of these from? And I looked at all the days. It was like right before I was supposed to throw every single day. I was like, this makes a lot of sense.
I mean, at least it's something tasty. Like you got a good meal before meet. Because I know people that like wouldn't eat and stuff. I'm like, you guys are crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, throwing's like not too bad because you don't really have to do like the extensive warm up and everything. But yeah, that's the only ritual I have.
So take me through, you said you were in Oregon for 21 days. Take me through that whole thing from winning, I believe it was your second national title, to becoming an Olympian. Take me through that whole thing and what that was like.
So this is actually really weird. My time adjustment from Oregon to coming back to Ohio was actually worse than coming back from Tokyo. And Oregon's only 3 hours away?
Yeah, sounds, yeah.
Tokyo's 14 or 13 or something crazy like that. Sorry, can I?
No, you're good. You're good.
So we get out to Oregon about 3 or 4 days before we're supposed to throw. Just have a little bit of time to adjust to the time zone. And then we have our national championship meet. That was my first time ever being in Oregon or being in Hayward Field. And Hayward Field, I don't know, is a pretty big field for like track and field athletes. It's supposed to be like super fast and just like super good energy all the time. So I get out there and my first like few rounds of throws are just like not good. I don't know what it was. I think I was partly tired and just like stressing myself out. So I wasn't like focusing in on the competition. And then we get to finals. I think I go into first place on my 5th round and then drop to 2nd. And then in my 6th round, I win the meet. But it was weird because like I was obviously like excited to be there and win, but it just felt like I don't know. The whole time I felt like I was experiencing it from outside of my body. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't like super excited after I won that. I mean, I was, but I also wasn't. It was weird. And then I stay out there. Olympic trials are like 2 weeks after nationals. So I stay out there for those 2 weeks just because it didn't make sense to go back to Ohio for a week, come back out.
Then you'd have to readjust and then come back out and readjust.
Yes, exactly. So I stayed out there. We trained out there. Luckily, my coach, her husband, and then one of my other teammates, she's a sprinter. So like they were all out there with me. I was able to hang out with them. Like I wasn't just out there by myself. That would be terrible.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have had the same outcome if I didn't have people with me out there. I would have gone a little crazy. But I stayed out there for that time. And then the weird thing that track does is that we had our preliminary throws, or not track, the Olympic trials does, is we have our preliminary throws in the morning, and then that coming night, we have our finals. And so this is different from a lot of meets that we normally go to. And so I did my initial throws, and then I went home, took an ice bath, like basically just trying to revive my legs and my opportunity to like continue to compete. And so I did that and came back to the meet, and I was like, all right, I'm ready to go. Like I knew I had to start off big. I was like, if I start off big, like there's a better opportunity for me to make the meet rather than if I start off like with a safety throw, is what we normally call it. And so then my distance stuck throughout the whole meet, and I was able to make it to the Olympics. It was crazy. As I was walking into the ring for my last throw, I already had known I made the meet. And so when I got there into the ring, I was just like completely like unfocused. I was like smiling like crazy. And then I like started crying as I was walking into the ring too. And I was like, all right, I don't even care how far this goes. I just want to throw it and then like go celebrate. Because my coach were right over there. And then my mom and dad actually had come out for that meet and nationals to like come watch me. So it was cool.
So you made it to the Olympics. That I probably can feel like cannot replace any feeling that you've probably ever had in your life. Being over in Tokyo, walking, doing everything. What was that like? Give me some experiences, like what it was really truly like being over in Tokyo, competing for Team USA?
So first off, everybody in Tokyo was so nice. Everybody there was like, even though there was a language barrier, you know, they were just like super nice and like understanding. They tried to help us with any situation we were in. You know, if I was trying to find the bathroom, I would try and say,
Yeah, I was gonna say, what did you always have to like kind of almost like hand signal type things?
will translate on my phone, and I would show them like I put bathroom in English and then just show them like, and they would point to where it was. And so they were super understanding. Second off, it was so clean over there. I have never seen a country so clean. I never saw a bag of trash on this. That sounds so weird, but I was so excited.
But that is something that you notice too, especially like that.
Yeah.
Like you may not think of it much back here in the States, but when you go somewhere and you're like, I don't even see anything. It's crazy. Like what a difference when you
like, I never even saw a trash can on the streets too. So that was shocking to me. I was like, wow, that was really cool. Not because I think they're dirty, but like just because there's living there. I have to preface that. But after that, I would say it was just cool to it was so hot there. That's the other thing I was about to say. It was so hot. Every single day it was like 80 to 97 degrees. Some days over that. And it was 80% humidity all the time. So it was just constantly feeling like you were getting out of the shower. And it was terrible. So
it's almost like that Florida weather where you just constantly feel
worse than Florida. And so USA was lucky enough to have their own training hall. So normally I would just have to practice where everybody else practices, but USA had their own facility. And it was basically a facility for gymnastics, wrestling, any of those sports. And you would just go there, basically spend your whole day there, because it was a 1 hour bus ride there, 1 hour bus ride back. So I would go there at 10 in the morning, sit around for an hour, get ready for practice for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then sit around. They had a food hall there. So I would eat lunch or dinner and then go back to the village. And the village was pretty cool. I mean, they had, imagine like your typical college dorm, like all the towers with all the like student housing, and that's basically it. But each country has their own tower. So it'd be like a USA tower, China tower, Japanese tower. But like the smaller countries, I think Venezuela's was one, they would share a tower just because they don't have as many people coming. But other than that, I would say one of my favorite moments while there was walking into the stadium. I think it was a beautiful stadium. It was built just for this event, so it had never been used. And just walking into it, I was in complete awe. I was like, this is the only stadium I've ever seen that's like just for track. It's so pretty. Like, it was awesome.
It's crazy. Like I can't even imagine what that feeling of walking in is like, and like being surrounded by all these people you probably watch. Some of them you probably watched growing up as a kid. Like that's what's crazy too. I was gonna ask, did you actually build any connections with any of the other athletes through the Olympics?
So I was able to talk to a lot of the Team USA athletes, but other than that, I didn't see many other countries' athletes. I know a few of them from college. I know one of them for Trinidad and Tobago. She competed against me in college, so I remember her. But other than that, I didn't really like get to talk to anybody just because we were there for competition. And
exactly,
about to be waiting to throw and be like, hey, what's your name? Like, you know.
Everybody like had their own agenda in a way and like was prepared for the task that they had at hand.
Oh yeah.
So I want to ask you a few questions real quick about just being an athlete in general, going from walk on, doing all this incredible stuff. What advice would you give to maybe a young athlete, like maybe a freshman in college or somebody that's about to graduate college? What advice would you give them?
I would just say always trust the process. You know, a lot of the times I put the analogy of you have a pickaxe, and sometimes the pickaxe gets dulled down and you're trying to break through this wall. But at the end of the wall, there might be like gold or whatever you want, like a new house, a new dog, like something like that. There's always going to be that goal at the end. And it's just a matter of how hard you work with what you're given to get to that goal.
That right there, how hard you work with what you're given, because you're not always going to be given the best tools for the task. And that's in anything in life, career wise, family wise, whatever it is, you may not always be given the best tools, but you have to work hard with it. And if you don't put any effort, you might have to put in more effort than someone else, but that's okay, because guess what? That feeling at the end of when you actually do achieve that task is going to be better than the person who didn't hardly have to work for it. You feel more accomplished because you worked your ass off to get what you want. That is one thing that every one of my accomplishments, and I'm sure you can say the same, the ones that I worked my ass off for, I feel I still to this day, people might get annoyed that I still talk about them sometimes, but that's okay. We're proud of our achievements that we have. And if you have to work for it, it's a way more better feeling. And, I'm not a very religious person, but God gives I can't even remember the saying, the toughest challenges to the toughest soldiers, or whatever it is. You're gonna be given, sometimes that's what you need, is those tough times, and you're gonna have those downs, those ups and downs, like we've talked about, and that's okay. Just keep fighting, keep going, keep working your ass off, and you never know where you might get. Hell, you might get to the Olympics just like you. But I have 3 questions that I like to ask all of my guests towards the end of the episode, and the first one, I'm very curious to hear this from you, is what are the goals for you going forward?
So my first 2 goals for this year: break the indoor national record, which I think it's like 1947, 1937, somewhere in there. So my goal is to throw 1950, just so I'm over it. I know I beat it. And then outdoor phone call. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep, we're good.
Sorry, I was getting a phone call.
You're
Second
good.
one, break the outdoor record. And then the world championships for track are this year, and they're in Oregon again. So I am going to try to make that team. That's the next goal we got for this year. And then hopefully at the end of this year, somewhere in there, I'm getting all the
You're just
notifications.
a popular person tonight.
I somewhere throw 20 meters.
Another one that I like to ask is, who is your biggest inspiration? I guess I keep messing this up. I need to put it when I write it down, but who or what is your biggest inspiration?
Definitely one of the biggest inspirations in my life is my family. Right before indoor nationals, my grandpa actually passed away like a week before we were supposed to leave. And I was like debating so hard on if I actually wanted to go or not. And I was talking to my parents about it. I was like, I'm going to miss the funeral. Like, I don't want to go, type of thing. And they were like, if you don't go, like, Grandpa is going to be like upset with you. His name was Paul, so we called him Grandpa. And so I like went there, and I ended up like winning, and I was just overjoyed. I like called my parents right after, and they were like, Grandpa is so proud of you, like all this stuff. And so that's like definitely one of the biggest like factors in my success. Every time I throw, my mom will text me, don't forget to be awesome. That's kind of like her catchphrase that she uses every single meet. She'll send me a text that. My grandma will text me every single meet and be like, throw it to the moon. And sometimes she'll use like a little emojis. I don't know how she knows how to work her phone, but sometimes emojis, sometimes she won't. And just like always having them as my support is awesome. And then one person I look up to is Baker Mayfield. Because he came in from a similar situation, he was a walk-on at Oklahoma and then eventually like made his way to the NFL. And I just think hearing from that and like hearing the success behind him and his story is just really helpful and encouraging to me and other walk-ons to like know it's possible to do such great things from different circumstances that other people are in.
Sometimes there's a lot of success stories with these walk-ons in every sport, no matter what sport. Sometimes, people might get discouraged being a walk-on, but sometimes that might be the best thing for them, because they have that fuel to work harder than everyone else, put in, because you feel like you have to put in more effort, and you honestly, you might have to, and
Oh, yeah.
it can excel you way past your potential, what you think is your
Right.
potential. And then you can lead to great things. Look at Baker Mayfield, look at even CJ Saunders, who I've had on this podcast, who's now playing for the Panthers. Like, all these things, being a walk-on, some people think bad about it, but in reality, it could be the best thing for that athlete.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it helps fuel a lot of people, but obviously, like, there are some that get discouraged by it. But like, when you're a walk-on, you can't just rely on that talent that you have from high school or whatever. So that different meaning of, I have to work hard to get here. I have to work hard. Nothing was ever like given to you because of your like athletic ability before that. So I think that's one of the things that separates a lot of walk-ons and their mentality from that.
Yeah, 100%. Because I remember too, like, kind of, this is a similar situation. Like, my senior year, when we're in high school, I mean, let's be real. Most of us, if we go play college sport, you're top dog in high school. And my senior year, I got lazy. And I was out for multiple games for breaking my elbow, but I also, like, I just did not have the season I wanted to have. And I looked at, like, looking back now, it's because I got lazy. And then when you get to that first year of college, and, we don't have walk-ons at the D3 level or anything. Everybody just, it's different situation. But, I got that wake up call, like, hey, dude, you're not as good as you might think you are. And sometimes that walk-on can, like, being like put as a walk-on can be your wake up call to, all right, I need to work harder. Because, and the other, you can flip it too and look at some of the scholarship athletes. They'll continue to do almost like just, half-ass things in a way. And you might see them drop off. You've seen multiple recruits, oh, we got this, I'm a football guy, and you're like, oh, Ohio State has this big time 5-star recruit coming in. But then all of a sudden, 2 years later, they're no longer playing football. It happens all the time. So sometimes being that walk-on is 100% okay.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, it's a different mentality that people like come in with as walk-ons versus like other athletes. You have to fight for your spot to be on the team. So you have to give 110, 120% effort every single practice. So it just is very different from, in my experience, at least. I'm not I can't talk, like, in my experience, there's a clear difference on like everybody on the team.
But one of my favorite questions that I like to finish up with is, if you could go back in time and tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
Don't do hurdles. When I was in middle school, I was set on doing hurdles. I was like, this is going to be my thing. I practice them by myself. I would go home and practice hurdles by myself. And I remember I was so mad when my coaches were like, you're not doing that. Don't even try. And they were like, you're sticking with shot put. I was so mad at them. So I would tell myself that, and to stick with shot put, and you'll probably like the outcome from it.
Sometimes I wish I could go back in time and tell myself a lot of things, but sometimes athletically, those are some of the best things that you wish you could have told yourself, because I stuck with basketball for way too long.
Yeah. Yes. But I ran cross country in high school. I stuck with, like, I like the team aspect of it, but I stuck with it way too long. There's no correlation between cross country and shot put. So. No.
But this leads us into my favorite segment of the podcast, which is Motivation Monday, y'all. Motivation Monday is the point in the episode where I allow the guests to give our Roughnecks listeners a little inspirational bump to set the tone as they listen on Monday morning, or whenever they choose to listen to it. But what do you have for Motivation Monday?
I'm not really a good motivator. I kind of just say everything like straight up as it is. But I mean, we've touched upon a lot of it. Like, your hard work determines how successful you will be in life, and like where your career path takes you. You have to really focus on what you want to do, and not how people perceive you, but like how you perceive yourself, and how you can make all these different changes in your life. if you want to go to the Olympics or play professional football, like you have to live the lifestyle to be in that position to go to that next level, you know. That's one of the most important things. Like you can't say you want to be a CEO one day, or you want to, like I said, be a professional football player. You can't say that and just be doing whatever you want. You have to live the lifestyle to really like solidify that that's what you want and that's what you're going to do.
100%. Like you have to live that life. That's essentially what you're saying. Like, and it's going back to the whole thing. Look up to those people who are doing things better than you, because if you want to be doing that, then maybe you should be looking at them, not at the people who are talking about, you know, or almost saying, oh, they're not doing it right. You got to look at some of the people, if they're successful, like you got to look at Elon Musk. I guarantee you, I believe he looked at other people like Jeff Bezos, what they did, learn from them. You learn from their mistakes and you learn from their successes. But the one thing, you can't get anything better than actually doing it yourself as well. Because I've always said multiple times on this podcast, you will learn more from your failures than you ever will your successes, because those failures push you in the right directions. And it's okay to fail. People fear failure. I've talked about on this podcast multiple times. Like, this is not my first podcast. My first podcast completely failed. And you know what? I look at it now because I only had 13 episodes on my last podcast, but now I'm up to 57. So it's a whole different aspect. And it's crazy. Like, your failures, it's okay to fail. Don't fear it. Now, don't try to fail. Always try to succeed. But just know those failures will come. Don't take it as don't feel sorry for yourself. Learn from it and grow.
Yeah. Like you said, like, don't let those failures define you, you know. In my career, like I said earlier, like I started off with a terrible mark. I was set on that defining me. And then I finally had like the mindset change of like, this is not who you are. Like, this is not how you want to show off all of your skills. You do not want to be like, not that other people's opinions matter, but like, this is not how you want to show off all of your hard work. Like, you didn't put this hard work in for nothing. You want to be the best, and to be the best, you can't let those failures define you.
100%. But with that, that's a wrap on the 57th episode of the Roughnecks podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people follow you on social media and continue to follow your career?
Yes. So my Instagram is AAQUILLA.
I'll put it right here on the screen.
Wherever it is. And then my Twitter is Adelaide Aquilla.
Be sure to go follow her, continue to support her. Maybe we'll see her in the Olympics again. Hopefully. I have a good feeling that we will. But thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode. You guys know the deal. Life is hard and it's going to knock you down just like a bull does to a bull rider. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life. Roughnecks out. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of the Roughnecks podcast. If you like this show, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. Be sure to head over to social media and give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Roughnecks Podcast. And our Twitter is at Roughnecks Pod C1. If you ever have a guest idea or just a question that you want to shoot me, then email me at roughneckspodcast@gmail.com. Don't let that bull of life walk all over you when it knocks you down. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life. Until next week, Roughnecks out.